rā tātou te tuatai ka rere atu te mihi mai maua o ka tai atu ki te tangi o te kio. Nā reira, mihi kawana ki te Aotearoa, ki Ngāti Toa Rangatira, ki Ngāti Raukawa, ara ko te upoko o te ika. Ka tū tēnei o tauranga Moana ki te mihi atu ki au kōtau. Morning. As I was sitting listening to David, I was reflecting on India's talk this morning, and particularly this idea of what I was asked to come and do is talk about a Māori view of sustainability. And not wanting to disappoint, from my view, what you get is a Piri Rākau view, which is my hapu, potentially a Ngāti Ranginui view, and if you're lucky, a Tauranga Moana view. But if you were to get anyone from different iwi or hapu up here, their view is derived from their whakapapa and from their relationships and their rohe. However, as I was sitting listening to David, I was thinking there's a language of sustainability for Pākehā, for tauiwi, which is around opportunity, potential, contribution, value. And these are powerful terms and ones I'd encourage you to explore in your setting. These aren't our terms as tangata whenua. It's not how we understand. And perhaps if there's equivalent terms in English, it would be relationship and gift. And by way of starting, I'll just refer to one of our adopted Tauranga Moana experts, Dr. Pāropata, who does a lot of rongoa in Tauranga Moana. He talks about being tangata whenua as people who can hear the land crying. And as an entry to this, that seemed very appropriate. So I wondered if our wonderful AV people could dim the lights. And I wondered if all of you in the audience would be so bold as to, if this works, where am I pointing it? It's not working. Oh, I got it. Fantastic. I wondered if everyone in the audience, if you would be kind enough to close your eyes. Takina tura te kawatapu o I o matua kore. Te toi nuku te toi rangi te puhi o ngā rangi tūhae. I te matatanga mai o te ao ko I o anake. Nāna nei hāti a te mauri ki roto I te kore te whiwhi a te kore te rawe ae. Ka puta ko te pōnui, ko te pōro, ko te pō tango tango e. Ka puta ko te ao marama e. Ko rangi nui e tua ke nei ko papa tua nuku e takoto nei e. Nā rawa ko tāne hanga I te wāhine ki koko hine aku o nei. Nā rawa ko hine ti tamaka puta ko te ira tāngata ki te whai au, hi te ao marama e. In the beginning, there was te kore. Te kore was the nothingness and the potential for everything. And into the nothingness came a thought, and from that thought was created te pō. Welcome to open your eyes. But what I'd like you to do, if you're physically able, is to put yourself in an uncomfortable position, like the position they make you do on an airplane if you were going to crash, which thankfully none of us did. And into te pō, there were created two beings, Ranginui and Papa Tuanuku. And the love between Ranginui and Papatuanuku formed the multitude of our atua. And atua is all that is beyond us, all that is beyond our influence, all that is beyond our reach. And some of those names are well known to you. Tangaroa, Tāne Mahuta, Tāwhiri Mātia, Ongo Mai Tāne, Haume Tiki Tiki. Others perhaps have been lost in the process of colonisation and of destruction. Ine Raumate, Ine Takurua, Ine Moana, Ine Korako. But all of those were children of Ranginui and Papatuanuku. As you are uncomfortable this morning, so were they. Captured between their parents, where all was created and all was available, but all was constrained without the possibility of growth and of development. And into that, as the parents moved, on occasion came flashes of light. And due to those flashes of light, some of those atua had the first light bulb moment, which is that there was something beyond their pō. And so they held together the first wānanga. And in that wānanga, they discussed how they may change their situation, how they might transform their world. And so Tāne Mahuta listened to his brothers, Tūmataonga, who said, we should kill our parents. We should kill our parents and create the new world upon their body. Tāwhiri Mātia, who said, we should let them be. But the other brothers and sisters knew Tāwhiri Mātia was able to move quickly in and out from his parents, and so was not constrained as they were. Ongo mai tāne, Haume Tiki Tiki, who argued for the status quo. But in time, these brothers and sisters continued with their wānanga. They reached the conclusion that they would change their situation, and into that came the solution, that what they would do is they would separate their parents. Some disagreed. Tāwhiri Mātia, chief amongst them, and so he left. The others, brothers and sisters, all set about attempting to shift their parents. First to try was Tūmataonga. And so he put his feet against his mother, put his shoulders against his father, and attempted to push them apart, but was unsuccessful. And then the others tried in turn. Tangaroa, Ine Korako, Kahukura, all of the names that are now known and some that are lost. Tāne Mahuta himself, and none were able to shift the parents. And then came an idea to Tāne Mahuta, and so he lay on his mother and he put his feet against his father, and then he pushed. As he pushed, light began to stream in, ki te whaiao, ki te ao marama. Could you please put the lights back up? And if you'd like to sit up, thank you for bearing with the discomfort. And so Tāne Mahuta separated his mother and his father, and as they tore apart, strings of connection remained between them. And the brothers and sisters actually were horrified at the wrong that had been caused by the separation of their parents. So they saw their mother naked and they saw their father naked. And so they went about a great work. And we see some of that work today, the great forests, the bush that was used to cover Papatuanuku, Tangaroa soothing her wounds with the seas, with the oceans, with the lakes, and with the rivers, and the other brothers and sisters all contributing to that. And then Tāne Mahuta particularly turned his thought to his father, and so he went about a great work of creation, creating the moon and the sun, a cloak of blue in the day, and a cloak of night, of darkness for the evening. The Tāwhiri Mātia, who had argued against the separation, was greatly angered, And so he set to war against his brothers and sisters, and he tore apart their creation, throwing down the trees of the forest, throwing the water up onto the land so that it fell into the sea, destroying all that he could. And so the brothers and sisters fought him, and yet none were able to stand against his anger. And so they called out for tūmataonga. And tūmataonga came at their call, and he fought against Tāwhiri Mātia. And as he fought, became weakened, he called out for his brothers and sisters, but they had fled. And so tūmataonga roused himself in his anger and overthrew Tāwhiri Mātia. But overthrowing Tāwhiri Mātia, he cast a curse on the creation of his brothers and sisters. He said that all that they had created would be for the use of his creations, because they had failed to support him in his time of need. Nevertheless, with Tāwhiri Mātia driven off, brothers and sisters set about repairing the work that had been done. And Tāwhiri Mātia, who realised he would not be able to overcome tūmataonga in his distress, tore out his eyes rather than observing the beauty that his brothers and sisters had wrought, and he crushed his eyeballs in his hands, and he cast them into the sky. And so the senior of all the stars was created, which is Matariki, which is of course the time that we are celebrating now. And Tāne Mahuta was inspired by his brother Tāwhiri Mātia, and so he created a great waka, called the Waka o Tamarereti, and set about collecting all of the small and larger stars, and then he sailed back up to his father, and he cast those stars across the black cloak that he created his father, and so he created the night sky that we see before us today. And then the brothers and sisters set about a new thing, which was to fill this beautiful creation with noise and with life. And so they started to create the birds and create the insects and the fish, and the great mammals and the reptiles that we see in this beautiful whenua that we live in. And as they set about that task, in time they came together to hākari, to celebrate their creation. However, what they all observed is that what they had created was out of themselves. Nothing was created from the original essence, which was their mother. And so Tāne Mahuta agreed to undertake a great journey to seek to create something that was from the essence of his mother. And so he set out on a journey across his mother until he came to a place called Kurawaka, where his mother agreed to share her mauri, her essence, with her son. And it was there that Tāne Mahuta sat and thought about what he might create with this mauri, with this soil from his mother. And so what he did was he formed a sculpture of his mother. And he formed a sculpture, and then he sat back and he waited, and nothing happened. And so he sat through the night and come to the dawn, and again, nothing occurred. And so he wept. So he decided that he would leave, and as he went to leave, he said a final farewell to this place. He knelt down and he pressed his nose to the nose of that sculpture, and tihei, he breathed his life essence into it. And then ki te whaiao, ki te ao marama, and from that was created the first human being, Ahine Ahuone, the woman created of soil. So she came to life, and Tāne Mahuta and her went on to have Hine Titama, the first natural born woman in our mythologies, in some of our mythologies. And Hine Titama was understood to be incredibly beautiful. Matawai ana ngā whatu I te tirohanga, which is just to see her would cause your eyes to glisten. And Tāne Mahuta was overcome with lust for his daughter, and so he transformed himself into another shape, and he became the lover of his daughter. And from them, in some mythology, is all the whakapapa for us as people, from the union of Tāne Mahuta and Hine Titama. And in time, Hine Titama began to ask who was her father. So she went to see her mother, Hine Ahuone, and Hine Ahuone said, go and ask your father. Go and ask your lover. And so she went and asked Tāne Mahuta, her lover, to which his response was, go and ask the posts of your house. And particularly on the east coast of the North Island, all of our whare are carved, which is a representation of our whakapapa. And if there's no carvings on a house, it indicates that there's no whakapapa before the people who lived in that place. So she went to her house, and in observing that, understood that her lover was also her father. So she was distressed. So entered the first great wrong in our relationship in this world, which was the wrong of incest. And so horrified and overcome, Ine Titama chose to turn her back on the greatest gift given to us by Tāne Mahuta, which is the world of light and understanding, Te Ao Marama. And so she returned to Te Pō, and she became known as Hine Nui Te Pō. And Tāne Mahuta called out for her to return, but she said she would not return. However, that whilst her children lived in his world, he was to be their guardian. But when they died, which was the consequence of his action, then she would be their guardian in the night. And so we have the beginning of the world, and so we have the beginning of our relationship with Te Ao Marama and with, if you prefer, our environment. So what can we learn out of these stories? First of all, there's not one story. So that's one story you could tell. You should still tell others. You go to other iwi, they have quite different kōrero for this story. You go to the Pacific, different again. But there are some essential elements to this. Before I'll cover here, as I was sitting reflecting, I think there's one more that's very important, which isn't up there, which I would want to share with you, which is that this worldview is not for strategies, it's not for plans. It is taught, and it is a form of communication as we talk about our tiriti relationship, but is not confined by our tiriti relationship. It's not confined by our planning and our strategizing around sustainability, well-being, and healthcare, or anything like that. This is our world. And one of the things I would want to leave you with that's not on here, that I think is essential, is to understand that for too long, we've talked about needing to bridge worldviews between Te Ao Māori and Te Ao Pākehā. But actually what we mean by that is we require our tangata whenua to cross the bridge, come to your front yard, come to your front door, and knock on it and make sure that we brought the meal as well. So if we're actually talking about partnership, if we're actually talking about te tiriti o Waitangi, and we're actually talking about meeting on a bridge, then the challenge I would leave you with is there is a long way to go, in my experience, with kaupapa Pākehā and for our leaders in that space to actually genuinely meet us on the bridge. And many of my whanaunga and our leaders in the space are no longer willing to walk across the bridge. They're waiting to see if all the words that we've talked about are genuine and have intent, and we're actually going to do them. In terms of the learning from the story, I'd want you to take away. First one is this, about whakapapa. So whakapapa means many things. Obviously, you might have heard the word in relation to genealogy. Also could be to be made land, or to be made earth, or to be made grounded. So our whakapapa means that everything in that story is related. So for my own whakapapa, it's 26 generations in Tauranga Moana. It is 99 from there back to the islands. And then we get into 27 generations with our atua. So there is a relationship from the beginning of Eo Matua Kore, if that's what you call the beginning, or if you call it Te Kore, all the way through to this fella who's standing up in front of you today. And that is an uninterrupted and relationship that has not been able to be destroyed by colonization, by assimilation, or by any of the other forms of oppression. That is an enduring relationship, and it is one that every Māori person in this room has by right of their existence. And so that relationship makes us not guardians of the environment, not directors of what happens into the environment, not manager of resources of the environment. It makes us taina, which is to say the younger sibling to the environment that we are part of. So if you listen to that story, the thing that should stand out is we are the last created thing in this environment. We are the youngest of all the youngest siblings in this environment. And so our responsibility is not to be the leaders of the environment, the directors of decisions about the environment. It is to be the protector and the supporter of the environment. So where David talks about the river and the idea of letting it regenerate itself, and then going back, I would only add to that by saying yes, which is to be directed by the environment and the decisions that are made. So whakapapa. Secondly, whanaungatanga, well-being is relational. The quality of our relationships, ourselves as people, ourselves with the environment, ourselves with the atua, is central to our well-being as people and central to our well-being as communities. And if the environment is unwell, we will be unwell. We cannot expect wellness when our people are living in unwell environments. Thirdly, about kaitiakitanga, the environment was not created for us. It's not a resource. It's not an opportunity. It's our mother. It's our father. It's our brother. It's our sister. In the same way those people in your family were not created for you, the environment wasn't created for us. We are in relationship with it. It is not a resource for us to exploit. And fourthly, mana motuhake. It is a normal and expected thing, as you can tell in that story, that we will have conflict as we make decisions in this space. That how we relate to the environment and how we use the gifts in that environment are not easy decisions, and conflict should be normative. We shouldn't come to these settings and agree with each other all the time. If we're agreeing, we're not actually in true relationship with the environment around us and not in true relationship with each other. Nā reira. And how we're doing for time. Ka pai, I thought so. Nā reira, ngā mihi kia koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.